A broken piece of pottery can rewrite everything we know about ancient societies. This is the story of a scientific revolution in archaeology, one that deciphers the hidden language of clay. By the end of this video, you will understand how a simple potsherd can expose vast trade networks and reveal the daily lives of people who lived thousands of years ago. We will uncover how a pot's chemical signature can pinpoint its origin to a single valley, and how invisible residues trapped inside can tell us the very last meal it held. What forgotten story would you want a simple clay pot to tell about your own world? Think about the first person who ever shaped wet clay into a bowl and hardened it with fire. This was not just an artistic whim, it was a revolution. For the earliest settled villages, the ability to create a durable, waterproof container changed everything. Food could be stored safely through lean seasons, water could be carried, and grains could be cooked into more nutritious meals. Pottery became the silent engine of society, enabling stability, trade, and the growth of communities. For generations, archaeologists pieced together this story by studying what they could see. They became masters of typology, carefully sorting potsherds by their form and their decorative patterns. A particular style of painted spiral might be linked to one culture, while a specific handle shape was attributed to another. This method constructed our foundational maps of ancient human interaction. But as one leading archaeologist candidly noted, we were often telling stories based on the pot's wardrobe, not its passport or its recipe. We were judging a book by its cover, and in doing so, we were missing the entire plot. The true journeys of these objects, the hands that made them, and the economic systems they represented remained locked away, invisible to the naked eye. This fundamental limitation is what created the need for a deeper, more scientific form of detective work. The secrets of a pot's origin are not written in its painted surface, but locked within its very substance. Picture a scientist in a laboratory, carefully grinding a potsherd into a slice so thin it becomes transparent, then placing it under the lens of a powerful microscope. A hidden universe explodes into view, a kaleidoscope of crystalline structures and ancient mineral grains. This is the world of petrography, a scientific method that reads the geological fingerprint of clay. Every potter, whether in a Bronze Age workshop or a modern studio, mixes their clay with something called temper. These are non-plastic inclusions, tiny fragments of crushed rock, sand, or even shell, added to prevent the clay from cracking as it dries and fires. It is this unique recipe of local clay and local temper that creates a mineralogical signature as distinctive as a human fingerprint. For example, if an analysis reveals tiny shards of volcanic ash mixed into the fabric, it strongly suggests the pot was made in the shadow of an ancient volcano. The presence of a rare, glittering mineral might point directly to a single, specific quarry or riverbed. This technique transformed our understanding of the Minoan civilization on the island of Crete. Archaeologists long believed that a particular, beautifully styled pottery found across the island was all produced in a single major palace workshop. But when they looked through the microscope, the mineral story told a different tale. The pots from each region contained unique local sands and rock fragments, proving they were made in small, local workshops scattered across the landscape, not centralized factories. This single insight redrew the entire map of Bronze Age economics, revealing a complex web of local production and regional trade, rather than a simple top-down system. Petrography gives us the first major clue, answering the fundamental question of provenance of where a pot was born. But what if we need to be even more specific? To pinpoint a pot's hometown not just to a region, but to a single clay source, the hidden mineral world revealed by the microscope is just the beginning. To pinpoint a pot's origin with even greater precision, we turn to the very atoms that compose it. A scientist holds a sleek, handheld device against the surface of an ancient potsherd. There is no grinding, no damage, only a soft hum as it silently reads the object's elemental soul. This is X-ray fluorescence spectrometry, or XRF, a method that allows us to decode the unique chemical recipe written into the clay itself. Think of every lump of clay as a unique geological cocktail, blended over millennia. It contains not just common elements like silicon and aluminum, but also a subtle sprinkling of trace elements such as strontium, zirconium, and rubidium. These elements act like a geochemical fingerprint, a signature so specific it can often link a pot to a single clay pit or river basin. The process is a marvel of modern physics. The device bombards the sample with a beam of X-rays. This energy excites the atoms within the clay, causing them to emit their own unique fluorescent light. By measuring the precise wavelengths of this light, the instrument can identify every element present and calculate its exact concentration. As one material scientist beautifully explained, XRF allows us to listen to the elements themselves. They tell us a story of geological formation and human selection that is otherwise inaudible. This is the difference between recognizing a language and hearing the specific accent of a single village. For instance, a study of pottery from the ancient Maya city of Tikal used XRF to analyze the chemical makeup of hundreds of sherds. The results were stunning. They revealed that a significant portion of the city's elegant polychrome pottery, long assumed to be a local product, was actually imported from a specific production center many miles away. The pots looked the same to the eye, but their elemental signatures told a completely different story of long-distance trade and cultural connection. This elemental analysis moves us beyond simply identifying minerals. It provides a highly specific geolocation for the raw materials, offering a powerful new level of clarity in our search for a pot's true passport. But what happens when a pot travels, when its surface becomes a canvas not just for art, but for the invisible residues of its long-vanished contents? A single fingerprint at a crime scene is a clue, but it is not the entire case. So it is with these powerful scientific tools. Petrography reads the mineral story written in the clay, but two different valleys can share the same underlying geology, producing nearly identical fingerprints. That beautiful volcanic temper in a pot could point to any one of a dozen villages nestled around the same mountain range. The method reveals the geological family, but sometimes it cannot name the specific hometown. X-ray fluorescence, for all its precision, faces a different challenge. A pot buried for millennia absorbs elements from the surrounding soil. Its beautiful, unique chemical signature can be subtly altered, contaminated by the very earth that preserved it. This is the provenance problem in action, where separate regions with similar rocks or clays create a frustrating map of overlapping possibilities. So how can we be sure of our conclusions if our tools, however advanced, only ever give us a fragment of the truth? The answer lies not in choosing one method over another, but in weaving their stories together. By combining the mineral narrative from the microscope with the elemental tale from the XRF, we create a corroborating chain of evidence. If both techniques independently point toward the same unique location, our confidence soars. This integrated approach builds an analytical framework that is far more resilient, turning what was once ambiguous into something we can state with much greater certainty. It transforms a lone clue into a confirmed alibi for the past. Yet even the combined power of petrography and XRF has its limits. For the ultimate level of precision, we must turn to a method so sensitive it reads the very soul of the clay. Instrumental neutron activation analysis, or INA, is often described as the gold standard of ceramic provenance. It operates on a principle that sounds like science fiction. A tiny sample of pottery, no larger than a grain of rice, is carefully removed and placed inside a nuclear reactor. There, it is bombarded with neutrons, which makes the atoms within the sample temporarily radioactive. As these atoms decay, they emit gamma rays with unique energy signatures. A detector then reads this symphony of radiation, identifying not just the presence of elements, but their exact concentrations down to parts per billion. This incredible sensitivity reveals a chemical profile of over 30 different trace elements. A fingerprint so detailed and distinct it can often pinpoint a part to a single clay pit or even a specific workshop. The power of this technique is perfectly illustrated by the story of Terra Sigillata, the iconic red gloss tableware used across the vast Roman Empire. For centuries, archaeologists assumed this standardized pottery was produced in a few major Italian centers and then exported. But when INA was applied, the chemical data painted a far more complex and fascinating picture. The analysis revealed distinct chemical groups that corresponded not to one source, but to several major production centers, from Italy to Gaul to North Africa. Each region had its own unique chemical signature embedded in the clay, allowing researchers to track the flow of these goods across the ancient world with unprecedented confidence. They could now distinguish a bowl made in a workshop in Arezzo from one made in Lyon, revealing intricate economic patterns and local imitations that were completely invisible to the naked eye. This was a monumental leap. INA moved the entire field from speculative maps to confident assertions about ancient trade, mobility, and economic organization. It gave us a hyper-accurate chemical passport for these objects, finally answering the question of provenance with a level of certainty that once seemed impossible. But knowing where a pot was made only tells half of its story. The other half is locked away inside, preserved in the microscopic residues of everything it once held. A pot's mineral story and its chemical fingerprint are two different languages, but when we learn to speak them together, they can tell a single, undeniable truth. Think of it as a Venn diagram where the separate circles of petrography and geochemistry overlap. It is in that central zone of agreement that a high-confidence interpretation is born, one far more powerful than any single line of evidence could provide on its own. Petrography gives the geochemical data its context. For instance, an XRF analysis might flag a surprisingly high calcium signature. On its own, this data point is a mystery. But then, we look through the microscope and see the reason why: tiny fragments of crushed shell that were deliberately mixed into the clay as temper. One method provides the raw number, the other reveals the physical cause, and the story clicks into place. This synergy was brilliantly demonstrated in a study of ancient ceramics from Anatolia, a crossroads of early civilizations. Researchers were analyzing pots from different village sites that, chemically, appeared to be made from very similar local clays. Based on elemental analysis alone, they might have been grouped together as products of the same community. But the petrographic microscope revealed a crucial technological divide. One group of potters used crushed volcanic rock as their temper, while another group, using the same base clay, consistently used grit from a different geological source. This was not a story of geography but of culture. It revealed distinct technological traditions, separate schools of knowledge passed down through generations. One community preferred the properties of volcanic temper, while their neighbors, just a few miles away, held to a different recipe. By combining the methods, the researchers could reconstruct not just where a pot was made, but how. They could glimpse the cultural preferences and the hands-on technological choices of the people themselves. This integrative approach transforms a collection of isolated data points into a cohesive narrative about human ingenuity. It allows us to see the ancient potter not as a generic producer of goods, but as a skilled technician making deliberate decisions, a member of a community with its own unique identity and shared knowledge. Yet knowing exactly where a pot was made still leaves a profound question unanswered. How did the potter actually achieve their creation? To uncover that, we must journey into a world of breathtaking detail, a scale so small it defies ordinary sight. A scanning electron microscope, or SEM, does exactly that. It bombards a sample with a focused beam of electrons, capturing signals that build an image of staggering clarity and depth. This is not a simple photograph, it is a map of the ceramic's soul, revealing the intricate landscape of its internal structure. We can see the individual clay particles, their size and shape, and how they are packed together. We can observe the tiny voids and pores, and most importantly, we can witness the evidence of the fire itself. This is where we find the potter's fingerprint, permanently etched into the material. As one specialist in archaeological materials explains, the SEM shows us the clay's memory. It reveals whether the firing was a hurried, smoky affair or a carefully controlled, sustained mastery of the kiln. The key evidence lies in a process called vitrification, where the intense heat begins to melt the minerals in the clay, forming a glassy bond. By analyzing the extent and pattern of this glass formation, scientists can deduce the precise temperature range the pot experienced, often within just 50 degrees. They can also read the atmosphere inside the ancient kiln, discerning if it was an oxygen-rich, oxidizing environment that produced red and brown colors, or an oxygen-poor, reducing one that created gray and black finishes. This visual evidence provides a direct window into the ancient craftsperson's actions on the very day the pot was fired. We are no longer just analyzing an object, we are witnessing a single, decisive moment in its history, a technological decision made by a skilled individual thousands of years ago. That microscopic view of a pot's internal structure is powerful, but it still leaves us as observers of a finished event. What if we could actually replay that event to test the very fire that gave the clay its permanent form? This is the principle behind refiring experiments, a hands-on method that turns a modern laboratory into a time machine for ancient pyrotechnology. Scientists take a tiny, often already broken, fragment of an ancient pot and place it inside a precisely controlled kiln. They then slowly reheat the sample through a range of temperatures, carefully observing the subtle changes that occur. The color might shift, the hardness can alter, and the minerals inside begin to transform in predictable ways. By comparing these changes to a library of known mineral behaviors, researchers can work backwards to deduce the original firing conditions with remarkable accuracy. Was this simple cooking pot fired in an open bonfire that reached perhaps 600 degrees Celsius? Or was it a product of a master potter's kiln, a sophisticated chamber that sustained temperatures well over 1,000 degrees? The refired clay remembers, and under the right conditions, it will tell you. A brilliant application of this technique solved a long-standing mystery, the creation of Athenian black gloss pottery. These vessels, famous for their jet-black metallic sheen, were highly prized across the ancient Mediterranean. For years, scholars debated how such a consistent, glossy finish was achieved. Refiring experiments provided the definitive answer. researchers took samples and subjected them to a carefully designed two-stage firing process in the lab. They discovered that the iconic black finish only appeared when the pottery was first fired in an oxygen-rich atmosphere and then subjected to a second stage in a smoke-filled, oxygen-poor environment before being cooled in a very specific way. By recreating these conditions, they proved that Athenian potters were not just artists, they were expert chemists and engineers, manipulating fire and air with breathtaking skill. This experimental approach does more than just give us a temperature reading. It closes the loop, transforming a silent, static artifact back into a dynamic process. It allows us to stand beside that ancient kiln, to hear the roar of the fire and witness the deliberate, calculated decisions that turned simple earth into a timeless object of both function and beauty. That unwashed pot in your sink leaves behind a faint, greasy film. Now amplify that idea across 5,000 years. Inside the microscopic pores of an ancient cooking pot, invisible chemical ghosts of long-vanished meals lie trapped, patiently waiting for their story to be told. This is the domain of organic residue analysis, a scientific technique that recovers the very essence of what these vessels contained. Over centuries, fats, oils, and other organic compounds from food and drink seep into the ceramic fabric and become sealed there, protected from the elements. Researchers carefully drill a tiny powder sample from the pot's interior, often from the base or where residue would have concentrated. They then use a process called gas chromatography mass spectrometry to separate and identify the individual chemical compounds within that powder. It is like listening to a chemical symphony and picking out the unique notes of every instrument. The presence of certain lipids can signal the processing of animal fats. Specific biomarkers point directly to fermented grape, the telltale signature of ancient wine, and the discovery of dairy fats reveals where milk was stored, cooked, or transformed. A stunning application of this method at sites in ancient Anatolia uncovered the earliest chemical evidence for fermented dairy production. In potsherds dating back over 7,000 years, scientists identified residues that could only have come from cheese or yogurt. This single finding pushed back the timeline for deliberate dairy fermentation by millennia, rewriting our understanding of how early pastoral communities managed their food resources. It suggests that the ability to process milk into longer-lasting products was a crucial innovation, one that may have enabled greater mobility and resilience. This technique does more than just list ingredients from a prehistoric pantry. It breathes life into these silent objects. A simple jar becomes a vessel for celebratory wine. A coarse pot is transformed into the very tool used to make the first cheese. We move beyond the object itself and into the sensory world of the people who used it, the smells of their kitchens and the tastes of their feasts, adding a profoundly human and intimate dimension to the hard science of archaeology. The invisible residues of ancient meals hold a deeper secret still, a hidden map of their very origins. Stable isotope analysis reads this map, tracing not just what was eaten, but the entire journey of that food. This technique measures the subtle variations in the atomic weights of elements like carbon and nitrogen preserved within charred food crusts or absorbed lipids. Think of these isotopes as a natural barcode stamped onto every plant and animal by its environment and diet. The ratio of carbon-13 to carbon-12, for instance, differs dramatically between plants that use distinct photosynthetic pathways. Maize, a grass that revolutionized the Americas, carries a heavy carbon signature that is unmistakable. Similarly, nitrogen isotope levels can tell us if a diet was rich in marine resources from the ocean or relied on terrestrial plants and animals from the land. It can even distinguish between wild forage and domesticated crops, revealing the very moment a community shifted to farming. One of the most profound applications of this method comes from Mesoamerica. For decades, archaeologists had theorized that the rise of complex societies like the Olmec and the Maya was fueled by the domestication of maize. But where was the definitive proof? By applying stable isotope analysis to residues inside cooking pots, researchers found their answer. The chemical evidence confirmed the widespread processing of maize, tracing its integration into the daily diet and linking its cultivation directly to population growth and social change. This moves us far beyond a simple list of ingredients. We are now reconstructing ancient agricultural calendars, understanding how people adapted their farming to different soils and climates, and seeing how a single crop could reshape an entire civilization. The humble cooking pot becomes a window into the ancient food web, connecting the technology of clay directly to the strategies of survival that built our world. A plain, undecorated potsherd offers no artistic clues and lies in a layer of earth devoid of charcoal or bone. For decades, such a find presented an absolute dead end for establishing a timeline. Radiocarbon dating requires organic material, but what dates the pot itself? The answer lies deep within the crystal structure of the clay, in a natural timekeeping mechanism that begins the very moment the potter pulls a finished vessel from the kiln. Minerals like quartz and feldspar, common in all clays, act as tiny radiation dosimeters. They constantly absorb trace amounts of environmental radiation from the surrounding soil, and this energy knocks electrons loose within their crystal lattices. Some of these electrons become trapped in imperfections in the mineral, steadily accumulating over time. The intense heat of a kiln fire acts as a reset button, draining all these trapped electrons and setting the geological clock back to zero. From that moment the pot is buried, the clock starts ticking once more. This is the foundation of luminescence dating. In a darkroom laboratory, a scientist carefully prepares a tiny sample, shielding it from any light. For thermoluminescence, or TL, the sample is gradually heated. The trapped electrons, when released by this heat, escape their prisons and emit a faint, measurable glow of light. The intensity of this glow is directly proportional to the total radiation dose the sample has absorbed since its last firing, which allows researchers to calculate its age. A related technique, optically stimulated luminescence, or OSL, uses specific wavelengths of light instead of heat to release the electrons, offering another pathway to read the same internal clock. The power of this direct dating method was spectacularly demonstrated with Raman pottery from Japan. These intricate, cord-patterned vessels were long known to be ancient, but their precise age was a subject of intense debate. Radiocarbon dating on associated materials provided indirect estimates, but luminescence dating allowed scientists to target the pottery directly. The results were staggering, confirming that Raman ceramic technology emerged over 15,000 years ago, making it some of the oldest pottery in the entire world. This single application settled a long-standing chronological dispute and firmly anchored a pivotal technological innovation in human history. By dating the artifact itself rather than its context, luminescence techniques provide an independent and often more reliable chronological framework. They cut through layers of assumption, offering a direct line to the moment of creation and refining our entire timeline of human ingenuity, one fired clay crystal at a time. A sealed Egyptian canopic jar sits silently in a museum case, its contents a mystery preserved for 3,000 years. To open it would be to destroy it, breaking an ancient seal and violating the very integrity of the artifact. But what if we could see straight through the clay walls without a single touch? This is the magic of computed tomography, or CT scanning, a technology that transplants medical imaging into the heart of the museum laboratory. The process is a symphony of invisible light. The vessel rotates slowly on a platform while an X-ray source and detector circle around it, capturing thousands of individual cross-sectional images or slices. A computer then assembles these slices into a breathtakingly detailed three-dimensional volumetric model, a digital ghost of the original object that can be peeled apart layer by virtual layer. This internal view reveals the potter's most intimate secrets. We can trace the winding path of a single clay coil from base to rim, seeing where one roll was joined to the next. We can identify hidden weaknesses, ancient stress fractures that never broke the surface, and even spot evidence of repairs where a valued pot was meticulously put back together long ago. The most profound revelations, however, come from what lies within. In the case of those Egyptian jars, CT scans peered through the sealed lids to reveal the delicate, linen-wrapped bundles of internal organs placed inside as part of ceremonial practices. This non-destructive insight provides a complete biographical sketch of an individual object, from its moment of creation on the potter's wheel through its long functional life and final ritual use. It transforms a static artifact into a dynamic story, allowing us to witness the entire sequence of manufacture and use that has been locked away from sight since the day the jar was first sealed. The smooth, symmetrical curve of a pot seems to whisper the secret of the potter's wheel, but appearances can be deceiving. For generations, archaeologists assumed that a perfectly round vessel with even walls was a sure sign of this revolutionary technology. The reality, uncovered by our analytical toolkit, is far more complex and fascinating. A master craftsperson can create astonishingly symmetrical pots using slow, hand-turning devices or even by pure hand coiling. The true signature of the fast wheel, the one that spins with kinetic energy, is not always visible on the surface. It is hidden within the fabric of the clay itself, a microscopic memory of the centrifugal force that shaped it. When a potter throws clay on a fast wheel, the spinning motion imposes a powerful directional force. Under the petrographic microscope, this force manifests as a distinct orientation. The tiny, plate-like clay particles, along with the non-plastic inclusions of sand or crushed rock, all align themselves in the direction of the spin. It creates a subtle grain, much like the wood grain in a tree, that is permanently fired into the ceramic. Furthermore, X-ray imagery can peer through the clay to reveal the vessel's wall thickness with incredible precision. A pot made on a fast wheel will typically show a remarkably even, parallel wall from rim to base, a symmetry that is almost impossible to achieve through purely hand-building methods. This empirical evidence has completely reshaped a long-standing debate in the Aegean world. For decades, the consensus was that the fast wheel was a later introduction, a technological import that arrived with new cultural influences. But when researchers applied these analytical methods to pottery from the early Bronze Age, they found the telltale signs of high-speed rotation in vessels that were far older than anyone had suspected. The microscopic alignment and the symmetrical walls were there, silent but undeniable. This discovery did more than just push back a date on a timeline. It rewrote the narrative of local innovation. It proved that Aegean potters had mastered this complex machinery independently and much earlier, challenging previous models of technological diffusion that were based purely on stylistic comparisons. The debate was settled not by reassessing the pot's artistic style, but by reading the physical story of its creation, a story written in the oriented crystals and parallel walls that only science could see. This moves our understanding from wondering what a pot looked like to knowing how it felt to be made, the dizzying spin and the sure hands that guided the clay into its final, enduring form. A pot's glaze can be a beautiful disguise, hiding the true origins of its raw ingredients. Lead isotope analysis deciphers this hidden history, reading the unique atomic signature locked within a pot's glossy surface. This method measures the precise ratios of different lead isotopes like lead-204, lead-206, lead-207, and lead-208. These ratios are set by the geological age and formation of the original ore, creating a fingerprint that is virtually impossible to replicate. When a potter crafted a lead-based glaze, they were essentially painting with a specific batch of mined ore, and that ore's isotopic passport travels with it, forever linking the finished pot to a specific mining region. A compelling case study from medieval Spain perfectly illustrates this power. Archaeologists analyzed the vibrant glazes on pottery from the Iberian Peninsula, expecting to find that the lead came from local Spanish mines. But the isotopic data told a different story. The chemical signature matched ore from mines in the Harz Mountains of Germany, hundreds of miles away. This single finding revealed an unexpected and robust long-distance trade network, one where raw lead was transported across the continent to supply local potters. It proved that medieval craft production was not an isolated, local affair, but a surprisingly interconnected economic system. Potters were directly linked to miners and metal traders, their artistic choices shaped by the availability of raw materials flowing along routes we are only just beginning to map. This technique opens a window into the complex pre-industrial supply chains that moved not just finished pots, but the very ingredients to make them, connecting workshops to global markets long before the modern era. A pot's journey truly began the moment it was pulled, still warm, from the kiln. It entered a social world, passing through hands and spaces, accumulating stories with every use. This entire lifespan, from its first day to its last, can be read by combining our analytical tools into a single, powerful narrative. We can now write the biography of an object. Under the scanning electron microscope, the faintest scratches on the interior surface tell a clear story. They are the abrasion patterns left by a wooden spoon stirring a thick gruel day after day, the physical evidence of routine and nourishment. Organic residue analysis adds another chapter to this story. A single pot might reveal traces of dairy fats near its base, evidence of its primary role as a storage jar for milk, while residues of fermented grapes higher on its walls hint at a later life, perhaps as a container for wine at a community gathering. This was not merely reuse, it was a transformation of purpose, a sign of an object's valued place in a household. Even a pot's breaking point can reveal a story of care. Petrographic analysis might identify a fragment used for a repair, a piece of a different vessel with a distinct mineral signature, carefully fitted to mend a crack. This act of curation speaks volumes. It tells us the pot was not easily discarded. It was worth the time and effort to save, suggesting it held economic or sentimental value far beyond its function. By weaving together these separate strands of evidence, we move beyond the object as a type and begin to see it as an individual with a history. A single pot's life, from its creation to its final resting place, becomes a lens focused on the daily rhythms, the economic networks, and the deeply held social values of the people who used it. A laser beam touches a faded red dot on an ancient Greek pot, and in an instant, the molecule's own voice whispers back its identity. This is Raman Spectroscopy, a method that listens to the vibrations of atoms. When the laser light interacts with a material, most of it bounces back unchanged, but a tiny fraction scatters with a different energy, a unique vibrational signature. Every mineral, every pigment has its own distinct molecular fingerprint, a pattern of peaks and troughs on a graph that is as identifiable as a human voice. For a conservator holding a priceless vessel, the beauty of this technique is its gentleness. It requires no sampling, leaves no mark, and can be performed right through a museum display case. The information it reveals, however, is revolutionary. That faded red on a pot, once assumed to be a common iron-based ochre, can be definitively identified as cinnabar, a brilliant red mercury sulfide mine from the Almaden region of Spain. This single data point ignites a chain of implications. It tells us that the Greek potter had access to a long-distance trade network that spanned the entire Mediterranean, bringing an exotic, expensive mineral to their workshop. The choice of this specific, vibrant red over a locally available alternative was a deliberate statement, communicating wealth, status, or perhaps a specific cultural meaning now lost to time. Raman Spectroscopy does more than just name the color. It deciphers the artist's palette and, by extension, the economic and symbolic world in which they work. It allows us to understand not just what they could make, but what they chose to make, revealing the conscious aesthetic and cultural decisions fired onto the surface of every decorated pot. The brilliant turquoise pigment known as Maya blue adorned sacred murals and ritual objects for over 1,000 years, defying both time and the harsh jungle environment. Its incredible resilience was an enigma that baffled modern science for decades. How could an ancient color retain such dazzling intensity while modern synthetic pigments faded and crumbled? The answer arrived not from art history, but from the precise beam of a Raman spectrometer. When scientists focused the laser on a sample, the resulting molecular signature told a startling story. The vibrant blue was not merely painted on, it was engineered into existence at a molecular level. The analysis revealed two distinct components working in perfect harmony: the organic dye from the indigo plant and an inorganic clay mineral called palagorskite. The true genius of the Maya chemists, however, lay in how they combined them. Further investigation with the scanning electron microscope revealed the ultimate secret. The Maya artisans did not simply mix the indigo with the clay powder. Through a specific and carefully controlled heating process, they caused the indigo molecules to vaporize and weave themselves directly into the empty structural channels of the palagorskite crystal lattice. It was a form of prehistoric nanotechnology, creating a hybrid material where the organic colorant was physically caged and protected by an inorganic framework. This molecular prison is what made the color so phenomenally permanent, resistant to weather, solvents, and even strong acids. This discovery fundamentally rewrites our understanding of Mesoamerican science. It was not a lucky accident or a simple recipe. It was the result of a profound, systematic understanding of material properties and chemical reactions. The Maya had mastered a complex pyrotechnological process to achieve a specific, desired outcome, creating a pigment that modern science is only now able to fully comprehend. This single analytical revelation transforms our perception of their civilization, elevating them from skilled artists to pioneering materials scientists whose legacy is literally etched in color. Every chemical bond in a pot has a unique hum, a resonant frequency that only a molecular detective can hear. Fourier Transform Infrared Spectroscopy, or FTIR, listens intently to this quiet symphony. The process is both elegant and precise. A beam of infrared light is passed through a tiny sample of the ceramic. As the light interacts with the material, specific chemical bonds within the sample absorb energy at frequencies unique to their structure, causing the bonds to stretch and bend. The instrument does not just measure one frequency at a time, it captures them all at once, using a mathematical process called a Fourier transform to decode the complex signal into a clear spectrum, a graph that acts as a unique molecular fingerprint. This spectrum reveals the very building blocks of the pot, identifying both organic compounds and specific mineral phases with remarkable clarity. In the heat of the kiln, the original clay minerals undergo a dramatic transformation, and FTIR is one of our best tools for reading that story. It can pinpoint the exact temperature at which a clay mineral like kaolinite loses its water and permanently changes into a hard, ceramic structure, locking in the memory of the fire. This technique also shines when analyzing residues. Imagine finding a dark, glossy material lining the interior of an ancient storage jar. Is it a tree resin used to make the vessel waterproof? Is it a bitumen used as an adhesive to repair a crack? To the naked eye, they might look similar, but their FTIR spectra are unmistakably different. Each substance produces a distinct pattern of peaks, allowing scientists to definitively identify the material. This molecular-level investigation provides a powerful layer of complementary data. It works alongside other methods, confirming the mineralogy suggested by petrography and adding a chemical dimension to the story of the pots, use that residue analysis alone might only hint at. By listening to the vibrations of the atoms themselves, FTIR helps us understand not just what a pot is made of, but the precise chemical journey it underwent to become a durable and trusted object in someone's daily life. This transformative science carries a profound responsibility, for every act of discovery is also a permanent alteration. To unlock the elemental secrets within a pot, a researcher must carefully remove a sample no larger than a grain of rice. For a thin section, a small slice is cut away. These are minimally destructive techniques, but the change is irreversible. The ethical question at the heart of this work is both simple and deeply complex. When is it justified to damage a unique object, a finite resource from the past, for the sake of new data? The answer is never taken lightly. Museums and research institutions follow strict protocols that function as a form of archaeological triage. The first and most important rule is to sample only what is already broken. A potsherd from a previously excavated collection is the ideal candidate, especially if it lacks distinguishing decorative features. A complete, intact vessel is almost never considered for sampling, its wholeness holding a value that typically outweighs the potential knowledge gained. The process involves a rigorous cost-benefit analysis, weighing the permanent physical loss against the potential for transformative insight. Researchers must demonstrate that their question cannot be answered by any non-destructive means, and that the results will significantly advance our understanding of a culture, a trade route, or a technological practice. As one museum curator notes, every sample we take is a permanent alteration. Our responsibility is to ensure the knowledge gained is worth that permanent loss. This principle of conscientious practice is the moral compass guiding every decision. It ensures that this powerful analytical toolkit is applied with reverence, not just for the data, but for the fragile, physical objects that are our only direct link to the hands that made them. A pot can be far more than a container for food or water. It can be the very engine of a technological revolution. This profound connection is perfectly illustrated by the story of the Vinča culture, a Neolithic society that flourished in the Balkans over 7,000 years ago. The Vinča are famous for their sophisticated, finely made pottery, often decorated with intricate symbols. But recent analytical work has revealed a far more startling dimension to their legacy. They were among the very first people in Europe to smelt metal. The question that captivated researchers was simple: where did this groundbreaking knowledge begin? The answer was found not in the gleaming copper artifacts themselves, but in the humble, heat-blackened ceramic crucibles and molds used to process the ore. Scientists applied lead isotope analysis to both the finished metal objects and the vitrified ceramic residues clinging to the inside of these crucibles. The isotopic signatures matched perfectly, tracing the very first smelted copper back to local Balkan ore sources. This was a monumental discovery. It proved that metallurgy was not a foreign import brought by traders, but an indigenous innovation, a local genius born from a deep, pre-existing mastery of pyrotechnology. The Vinci potters, with their generations of experience controlling kiln temperatures and understanding how clay transforms under intense heat, already possessed the fundamental skills needed to take the next great leap. They were not just shaping clay, they were learning to master fire itself, and in doing so, they unlocked the secret of transforming rock into metal. This technological breakthrough was almost certainly more than a mere industrial process. Residue analysis on pottery fragments found near metalworking areas tells a compelling social story. Chemical traces on large, communal serving vessels reveal evidence of fermented beverages and the fats of roasted animals. This suggests that metalworking was a powerful, perhaps even mystical act, surrounded by ritual and celebrated with feasting. The creation of metal was not just a technical procedure, it was a community event, a moment where the lines between craft, science, and ceremony blurred entirely. By weaving together the chemical stories from metal, ceramic, and food residues, we can see the complete picture. The Vinci culture represents the very dawn of a new age, the Chalcolithic or Copper Age, a period defined by the interconnected development of pyrotechnologies. It was their deep knowledge of clay and fire, honed for generations at the potter's wheel and the kiln, that provided the essential foundation for one of humanity's most transformative inventions. A single brushstroke on a porcelain vase holds a recipe for perfection, a secret formula invisible to the naked eye. To read it, we need a tool of immense precision, a method that can target one tiny spot without disturbing the masterpiece around it. This is the power of particle-induced X-ray emission, or PIXE. The process sounds like something from a particle accelerator, and in a way, it is. A beam of protons, focused to an incredibly fine point, is directed at a microscopic area of the pot's surface. When these high-energy particles strike the atoms in the glaze or pigment, they excite them, causing the atoms to emit their own unique X-rays. By measuring the energy of these X-rays, scientists can identify the exact elements present in that one specific spot, from the lead in a clear glaze to the cobalt that creates a brilliant blue. The true genius of PIXE lies in its spatial resolution, its ability to analyze a target smaller than the width of a human hair. This allows researchers to perform a virtual cross-section of a pot's finish without making a single cut. They can analyze the first layer of white slip applied to smooth the surface, then the specific elements in the blue decorative pigment, and finally the composition of the transparent glaze on top, all as distinct, separate events. This precise data has been transformative for understanding the legendary quality of Chinese porcelain. For centuries, the methods behind these revered celadon and blue and white wares were guarded secrets. PIXE analysis, however, has decoded them layer by layer. It revealed that achieving that perfect, translucent blue was not a one-step process. The proton beam showed that master potters applied the cobalt pigment in multiple, thin layers, each fired at a slightly different temperature, to build depth and intensity without allowing the color to run or blur. This was not painting, it was a form of ceramic alchemy, a meticulously timed dance of chemistry and heat. PIXE lets us appreciate this skill on an atomic level, revealing the patient, step-by-step craftsmanship that transformed simple clay into an object of timeless beauty and scientific wonder. The sheer volume of data from these analytical tools has ushered in a new era of archaeological science, one defined by digital synthesis. We are no longer just reading individual stories from single potsherds. We are compiling entire libraries of ancient economic information. This mountain of data, with its thousands of elemental readings, mineral identifications, and residue signatures, would be impossible to manage with notebooks and filing cabinets. Instead, researchers now feed all this information into sophisticated databases and use powerful statistical software to find the hidden patterns within the numbers. A technique called multivariate statistics can take the chemical profiles of 10,000 ceramic samples and automatically cluster them into distinct families based on their shared elemental traits. The computer does not see a pot, it sees a constellation of data points, and it can identify which constellations belong to the same galactic neighborhood. These statistical groups are then fed into Geographic Information Systems, or GIS, which layers the chemical data onto digital maps of the ancient world. Suddenly, what was a column of numbers becomes a stunning visual narrative. A cluster of data points with a unique chemical signature might map directly onto a single river valley, pinpointing a previously unknown production center. Lines of trade can then be drawn across the landscape, showing how pots from that valley traveled over mountain passes to distant cities. This digital integration allows us to ask questions on a scale that was once unimaginable. We can now track the rise and fall of a specific workshop over 500 years, or observe how a new pottery technology spread like a wave across an entire continent. We are moving beyond the biography of a single object to writing the history of the system itself, understanding the dynamics of supply, demand, and cultural exchange that shaped the economies of the ancient world. A laser beam narrower than a single strand of hair touches the surface of a celadon glaze, vaporizing a target 100 times smaller than a grain of salt. This is laser ablation inductively coupled plasma mass spectrometry, a method whose name is as precise as its function. The process unfolds in two breathtaking stages. First, an ultraviolet laser pulse ablates or instantly vaporizes a minuscule crater on the sample. This microscopic plume of vaporized material is then swept by a stream of argon gas into the heart of an inductively coupled plasma, a superheated cloud of ionized gas hotter than the surface of the sun. Here, the atoms are stripped down to their elemental ions, which are then sorted and counted by a mass spectrometer. The result is a complete elemental and isotopic breakdown of a spot almost too small to see, a depth profile of the ceramic soul. This incredible spatial resolution allows scientists to perform a chemical dissection of a pot's layers. They can analyze the pure body of the clay separately from the white slip coating on its surface, and then analyze the specific elements within a single brushstroke of blue pigment, all without any physical cross-sectioning. The most compelling application of this pinpoint precision lies in tracing the origins of cobalt blue, a color so precious it was once worth its weight in gold. For centuries, the vibrant blue on Chinese porcelain and Islamic tiles was a trade secret. Where did this dazzling pigment come from? LICPMS provided the definitive answer. By analyzing the unique cocktail of trace elements like manganese, nickel, and arsenic that accompanied the cobalt in the blue glaze, researchers could match the chemical signature to specific ore bodies. A bowl from Ming Dynasty China was found to contain cobalt with an elemental fingerprint that pointed not to a local source, but to the distant mines of Kashan in Persia. This single data point, read from a microscopic dot of color, revealed a sprawling, intercontinental trade network dedicated solely to the movement of a raw material for art. It proved that the global economy of luxury goods is not a modern invention, but an ancient reality, connecting potters in Jingdezhen to miners in the Middle Ages through threads of commerce invisible to everyone but the atom. This level of detail, this ability to ask a question of a single particle and receive an answer about the entire world, represents the absolute cutting edge of our analytical vision, a window into the past with resolution so fine it feels almost like a form of time travel itself. The next frontier in this scientific revolution is emerging from the most fragile evidence of all, the ancient proteins hidden within a pot's fabric. While we have learned to read the fats and oils, these new techniques go deeper, targeting the very building blocks of biological processes. Proteins are far more resilient than DNA, surviving for thousands of years in conditions that would completely shatter the genetic code. This robustness opens a door to a new world of specificity. Scientists can now take a residue sample and, by sequencing the preserved proteins, determine not just that a pot contained milk, but precisely what kind of milk it was. The subtle protein differences between sheep and goat milk become a clear identifier, revealing the specific animals a community relied upon. The potential extends even further to detecting the presence of specific enzymes. Finding the enzyme responsible for curdling milk would be the definitive chemical signature for ancient cheesemaking. Identifying the proteins from yeast would confirm the brewing of beer or wine, telling us not just that a beverage was fermented, but how. This emerging field of protein analysis transforms a simple cooking pot into a laboratory notebook. We are no longer just guessing at ingredients, we are reading the biochemical recipes for ancient food science. This adds a breathtaking new layer to our understanding of early biotechnology, diet, and health, revealing the intricate knowledge our ancestors possessed to transform their world one protein at a time. The very shape of a pot is a language we are only now learning to read with digital clarity. Three-dimensional morphometric analysis captures this language, translating the subtle curves and volumes of a ceramic vessel into a cloud of precise mathematical data. Using either laser scanners that map an object with beams of light or photogrammetry that builds a model from hundreds of overlapping photographs, this technique creates a perfect digital twin of the artifact. Once this model exists, specialized software dissects its geometry, quantifying aspects of form that escape the human eye. It can measure the exact rate of curvature in a bowl's wall, calculate its center of gravity, and analyze the symmetry of its profile down to a fraction of a millimeter. This moves the study of pottery from subjective visual comparison to objective statistical analysis. We are no longer just saying two pots look similar. We can prove their shapes are mathematically almost identical. This power of scale is transformative. A researcher can feed digital models of 10,000 vessels from a century of production into the software and ask it to find patterns. The algorithm might reveal that the rim diameter of a common storage jar shrank by a consistent, measurable amount every 25 years, a subtle stylistic drift invisible to someone holding just a few examples. It can detect the unique hand of a master potter, a signature written not in paint but in the consistent, slight asymmetry of a handle attachment, a personal flourish repeated across their work. This method can even trace the spread of a technological idea. Imagine analyzing the forms of water jars from a dozen neighboring villages. The software might cluster the jars into 3 distinct shape families, each corresponding to a different learning tradition passed from a specific master to their apprentices. We can then watch how one of those forms, perhaps a more efficient design, slowly replaced the others over generations, mapping the flow of innovation itself. This digital typology connects the abstract beauty of a pot's shape directly to the human behaviors that created it, revealing the invisible currents of cultural transmission that shaped our material world. A broken potsherd is no longer a silent fragment. It is a narrator, its voice unlocked by a chorus of scientific methods that have fundamentally rewritten the story of early ceramics. We have journeyed from the mineral tales told under a petrographic microscope to the elemental soul of a pot revealed by geochemistry, from the invisible residues of ancient meals to the precise memory of the kiln's fire. These are not competing techniques but a unified analytical symphony. Each method answers a different question, and when their voices join together, they transform our understanding from speculative guesswork into data-driven knowledge. We can now trace a pot's journey from a specific clay pit to a distant market, reconstruct the technological choices of the potter who shaped it, and even smell the aromas of the last feast it held. This is the true revolution, a move from seeing pots as types in a museum case to reading them as dynamic participants in ancient lives. The overarching theme that emerges from this new vision is one of profound interconnectedness. The methods are interconnected, each filling the gaps in another's story. The materials are interconnected, with clay from one valley, temper from a local quarry, and pigments from across a continent converging in a single object. And most importantly, the ancient people themselves were interconnected, their lives woven together by trade routes, shared technological knowledge, and the daily rituals of food and community that these humble pots made possible. Every new innovation in our analytical toolkit is another key, unlocking another chapter in the vast, silent archive of the human past that is held in clay. It invites us to look at the everyday objects around us with a new sense of wonder. What stories will future scientists read from the artifacts of our own time? We would love to hear your thoughts, so please share in the comments which ancient mystery you would most want these powerful methods to solve next. The story of early ceramics is at its heart a human story. Every analytical method we have explored is not just a tool for data collection, but a lens that brings the potters, traders, and families of the deep past into a sharper, more compassionate focus. We are no longer just studying objects, we are recovering the choices of the individual who selected a specific clay, the ingenuity of the community that perfected a glaze, and the shared moments of a family gathered around a cooking pot. This science allows us to witness human resilience and creativity expressed in the most fundamental of materials. If this journey into the science of the past has captivated you, if you have felt that connection to the hands that shaped these vessels, please support this channel by liking this video and subscribing for more deep dives into the mysteries history has left behind. We would love to hear your thoughts and continue this exploration together. What ancient culture's pottery would you be most interested in having analyzed with these powerful techniques? Is it the enigmatic Jomon vessels of Japan, the colorful wares of the Minoans, or the sophisticated porcelain of the Ming Dynasty? Share your ideas in the comments below, and let's keep the conversation going. Thank you for exploring the hidden worlds within clay with us.